This was not a routine harassment patrol. Every vessel carried live anti-ship missiles and a crew with specific orders to engage. The question was no longer if a conflict would start. The question was how many ships would survive the next 60 minutes. The morning heat was already heavy. It pressed down on the dark hulls as they moved in a tight, V-shaped formation. To the north, the jagged coastline of Iran remained hidden in the pre-dawn shadows. To the south, the supertanker Pacific Glory moved at a steady 12 knots. It was a steel island carrying 2 million barrels of oil. It was also the centerpiece of a coordinated execution. 30 miles to the west, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Carney patrolled the edge of the shipping lane. The ship was a billion-dollar shield of sensors and steel. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air was cold and smelled of ozone. Glowing screens illuminated the faces of young sailors. They had watched these waters for months. They had seen these Iranian boats 100 times. But something was different today. The tactical action officer leaned toward his primary display. The Iranian craft were not loitering. They were accelerating. They were splitting into 3 distinct groups. One group moved toward the Pacific Glory. The other 2 were heading for the narrowest part of the strait. The tactical action officer spoke to the captain. "Captain, boghammer groups are at high speed. They are on an intercept course with the tanker traffic." The captain looked at the radar return, confirmed their weapon status. "Sir, electronic signatures indicate their fire control radars are active. They are painting the Pacific Glory." The captain did not hesitate. "Go to General Quarters. Alert the 5th Fleet. Tell them the Iranians are moving to close the strait." The alarm began to pulse through the USS Carney. It was a rhythmic, low-frequency sound that tore through the silence of the morning. Men and women ran to their stations. Steel doors were slammed and locked. In the dark of the missile decks, the vertical launching system cells waited. 100 miles away in Manama, Bahrain, the lights of the U.S. 5th Fleet headquarters were burning. Generals and admirals watched the same digital icons on a wall-sized map. They knew the math. 20% of the world's oil passed through this narrow gap every day. If the Iranians sank even 1 supertanker, the price of crude would skyrocket. If they sank 3, the global markets would collapse. The Iranian commander on the lead craft felt the spray of the salt water. He was not afraid. He had been trained for this moment since he was a teenager. He keyed his radio. Group 1. Target is in sight. Prepare for engagement. The response came back through his headset. Copy. Group 2 is in position. Group 3 is at the chokepoint. The commander looked at the horizon. The first sliver of the sun was starting to break. It turned the water into a sheet of hammered gold. He raised his hand. In 5 minutes, the world would change. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 5:35 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the USS Carney. The electronic warfare officer called out to the bridge. "Captain, we are detecting multiple active seeker heads. The Iranian craft are painting the Pacific Glory with targeting radar. This is a launch sequence." The captain gripped the edge of the command chair. The ship was leaning as it increased speed to 30 knots. The vibration of the massive engines hummed through the deck plates. Bridge. Tactical. We need a visual on those leads. Launch the drone. A small, catapult-launched drone shot off the deck of the Carney. It climbed into the gray morning air. Seconds later, a grainy high-definition feed appeared on the screens. It showed the 12 Iranian boats. They were not just shadowing the tanker. They were maneuvering into a line of battle formation. This was a classic swarm tactic designed to overwhelm a single defender. 5:43 in the morning. The bridge of the supertanker Pacific Glory. Captain Mikhail Malikov looked through his binoculars. He could see the white wakes of the fast attack craft. They were closing at over 40 knots. They looked like small insects against the massive hull of his ship. But he knew those insects carried stings that could crack a hull. The radio on the bridge crackled with static. Then a voice came through in broken English. "Merchant vessel Pacific Glory, you are in restricted waters. Change course to the north immediately or you will be engaged." Malikov grabbed the handset. His hand was steady. "This is the Pacific Glory. We are in the international shipping lane. We are an unarmed merchant vessel. We are not changing course. The response was immediate. You have been warned. Malikov turned to his first officer. Send the distress signal. All frequencies. Tell the Americans, we are under imminent threat of attack. The first officer began typing. The SOS signal went out into the ether. It was picked up by satellites. It was heard by every ship within 200 miles. On the global maritime tracking maps, the icon for the Pacific Glory turned from green to a flashing red. 5:50 in the morning. The radio room of the USS Carney. The communications officer keyed the long-range hailing frequency. Iranian fast attack craft. This is the United States Navy warship on your port quarter. You are interfering with the innocent passage of a commercial vessel. Disengage immediately or you will be held responsible for the consequences. There was no reply for 10 seconds. Then the Iranian commander spoke. He did not use the official hailing frequency. He used the open bridge-to-bridge channel. American warship. This is a matter of national sovereignty. You are the intruders here. If you cross the line, we will defend our waters. Inside the Carney, the tactical action officer looked at the captain. Sir, Group 1 has reached the 3,000-yard mark. They are entering the inner engagement zone for their missiles. The captain nodded. Load the 5-inch gun. Tell the Seahawk to get airborne now. I want eyes on every boat in that swarm. High above, the sun finally cleared the horizon. It illuminated the scene with a harsh, bright light. The Pacific Glory sat in the center of the frame. 12 predators circled it. One lone American destroyer stood between them and a global catastrophe. The Iranian boats began to weave. They were testing the Carney. They were waiting for a mistake. 6 o'clock in the morning. Qeshm Island, Iranian territory. The heavy steel doors of a reinforced concrete bunker slid open. Inside, a silkworm missile battery was elevated toward the sky. Its radar dish began to rotate. The invisible beam swept across the Strait of HORMUZ. It was looking for a target. Inside the Combat Information Center of the American destroyer, a new alarm began to wail. It was a sharp, high-pitched tone. The electronic warfare officer shouted over the noise. Captain, we have land-based search radar. Qeshm Island is painting us. They are preparing a surface-to-surface strike. The captain did not move. He looked at the main display. The situation was expanding. It was no longer just a confrontation with small boats. It was a coordinated strike from the mainland. Initiate the electronic countermeasures. I want a noise jammer on that frequency now. 6 o'clock and 5 minutes in the morning. The flight deck of the USS Carney. The rotors of the MH-60R Seahawk helicopter blurred into a solid disk. The pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Miller, waited for the signal. The deck crewman dropped the green flag. The helicopter lifted. It pitched forward and accelerated away from the ship. Miller spoke into her headset. Control. This is Guardian 1. We are airborne. Moving to Sector Alpha. The controller responded. Guardian 1. Copy. You have 12 fast attack craft in your sector. They are splitting into 3 groups. Group 1 is closing on the tanker. Group 2 and 3 are blocking the southern exit. Be advised, we have active missile sites on the coast. Copy, Miller said. Her eyes scanned the horizon. From 500 feet, the scale of the threat was clear. The Iranian boats were like white streaks on a blue mirror. They were moving with precision. This was a choreographed maneuver. 6 o'clock and 15 minutes in the morning. The bridge of the Iranian command boat. The commander watched the American helicopter circle above. He knew it was carrying Hellfire missiles. He knew its sensors were feeding data back to the destroyer. He did not care. His orders were absolute. He picked up his radio. Base. This is Group 1. The American ship has launched its aircraft. We are at the final waypoint. Request permission to initiate the block. The voice from Qeshm Island was cold. Permission granted. If the American ship interferes, the batteries on the coast will engage. The strait must be closed by 7 o'clock. The Iranian commander looked at the Pacific Glory. The massive tanker was now only 2,000 yards away. It looked like a wall of steel. He pushed the throttle forward. The engine roared. The boat jumped over a swell. Behind him, 11 other boats followed. They were no longer circling. They were charging. The gap between the Iranian fleet and the British tanker was disappearing. On the USS Carney, the tactical action officer reported the change in behavior. "Captain, the swarm is committing. Group 1 is moving to cross the tanker's bow. They are going to force it to stop or ground itself on the shoals." The captain looked at the clock. The window for a peaceful resolution was closing. The Iranians were counting on the fact that the Americans would not want to start a war over a single tanker. They were wrong. "Man the 5-inch gun," the captain ordered, "and tell Guardian 1 to prepare to drop smoke. We are going to provide a screen for the Pacific Glory." The warning signs had been ignored. The escalation was now physical. Every second brought two nations closer to a fire that neither could easily put out. The air in the strait was thick with the smell of diesel and the electricity of a coming storm. 6:20 in the morning. The northern edge of the shipping lane. The lead Iranian fast attack craft, call sign Sabalin 1, suddenly veered toward the towering hull of the Pacific Glory. The commander of the boat stood behind the heavy machine gun mount. He did not aim at the bridge. He aimed 300 meters ahead of the tanker's massive bulbous bow. He squeezed the trigger. A rhythmic thumping sound echoed across the water as 12.7mm tracers cut through the morning mist. The glowing rounds skipped off the surface of the Persian Gulf like stones. They created a line of white geysers directly in the path of the merchant ship. 6:25 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the USS Carney. The tactical action officer looked up at the captain. "Captain, Sabalin 1 has fired warning shots across the bow of the Pacific Glory. The tanker is beginning to slow down. It is losing steerage way." The captain stepped closer to the primary tactical display. "What are our current rules of engagement?" The tactical action officer responded immediately. "We are authorized to use proportional force to defend commercial shipping from an overt act of hostility. However, the standing rules of engagement state that warning shots by an opposing force do not constitute an immediate threat to life, unless they are aimed at the superstructure." The captain's jaw tightened. They are playing the margin. They know we are restricted, until they actually hit something. Bridge. Tactical. Increase speed to 32 knots. Interpose the Carney between the lead group and the tanker. If they want to fire another burst, they can fire it at a United States destroyer. The destroyer surged forward. Its wake became a mountain of white foam. Inside the hull, the sound of the ocean rushing past was a dull roar. 6:30 in the morning. The bridge of the Pacific Glory. Captain Malikov felt the vibration change as the engines went into emergency reverse. The ship was too large to stop quickly. It was like trying to halt a moving mountain. He looked at the radar. The Iranian boats were now less than 500 meters away. They were buzzing his ship like hornets. The radio erupted. It was the commander of the Iranian swarm. "Pacific Glory, you are now dead in the water. We are sending a boarding party to inspect your cargo. Do not resist." Malikov grabbed the handset. He spoke to the USS Carney. "Warship Carney, this is Pacific Glory. They are threatening to board. I have 22 crew members on this vessel. We are unarmed. Please advise." The captain of the Carney responded. "Pacific Glory, this is Carney. Do not lower your ladders. We are moving into position. We will not permit a boarding in international waters." 6:35 in the morning. The sky above the strait. Lieutenant Miller, flying the Seahawk helicopter call sign Guardian 1, watched the maneuver. From 500 feet, she saw the American destroyer cutting a sharp arc toward the tanker. She also saw something else. On the deck of the third Iranian boat, a sailor was uncovering a twin-barrel 23mm cannon. Miller spoke into her radio. "Control. Guardian 1. Group 1 is uncovering heavy ordnance. They are not just using small arms anymore. I have a visual on a shoulder-fired missile launcher being readied on the Sabalin 3. The controller's voice was tense. "Guardian 1. Copy. Maintain standoff distance. Do not engage unless fired upon. We are trying to keep the lid on this. The two forces were now within shouting distance. The massive gray wall of the destroyer began to slide between the tiny Iranian boats and their prize. It was a game of chicken, played with thousands of tons of steel and high explosives. The Iranian commander looked up at the towering bridge of the USS Carney. He could see the American sailors in their flash gear. He could see the 5-inch gun turret tracking his every move. He did not blink. He knew the shore batteries were watching. He knew he was the bait. 6:40 in the morning. The central shipping lane of the Strait of HORMUZ. The standoff had reached a point of absolute friction. The USS Carney was now positioned less than 200 yards from the Iranian lead craft. The massive wake of the destroyer tossed the smaller boats like corks. On the bridge of the Carney, the captain could see the Iranian sailors clearly. They were not backing down. They were reinforcing their positions. 6:45 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the USS Carney. The air warfare officer suddenly shouted, "Captain, new contact. Bearing 090. Low altitude. High speed." It just popped up off the coast of Keshem Island. It is a drone. Profile matches a Shahed 136 Delta. The captain turned to the screen. Is it heading for us? Negative. It is bypassing our position. It is tracking the Global Voyager, the secondary tanker in the convoy. 5 miles to our east. The tactical action officer looked at the range. "Sir, we cannot intercept with the 5-inch gun. We are out of position. The Global Voyager is undefended." 6:52 in the morning. The deck of the second tanker, the Global Voyager. The merchant sailors on the bridge did not have a sophisticated radar system. They only heard the high-pitched whine of a lawnmower engine. The sound grew into a scream. A small, delta-winged aircraft dived out of the morning sun. It struck the base of the tanker's superstructure. A ball of orange flame erupted. The shockwave shattered the windows of the bridge. The Global Voyager groaned as the explosion tore through its communication arrays. Black smoke began to billow into the clear blue sky. It was a direct hit. The Iranians had drawn blood. 6:55 in the morning. United States 5th Fleet Headquarters, Manama, Bahrain. Vice Admiral Brad Collins stood in front of the massive digital display. The icon for the Global Voyager was flashing yellow. The reports were coming in fast. It was an unprovoked strike on a civilian vessel in international waters. Collins turned to his chief of staff. "They are testing our resolve. They think we will just watch while they pick off the tankers one by one. They are wrong." He picked up the secure line to the Pentagon. The conversation lasted 40 seconds. When he hung up, his face was like stone. When he hung up, his face was like stone. Authorized kinetic response. Neutralize hostile intent. Battery release is granted. 6:58 in the morning. The USS Carney. The message flashed across the tactical terminal. Battery release authorized. The captain looked at the tactical action officer. "You heard the Admiral. Guardian 1. This is Carney. You are cleared to engage the armed group with Hellfire missiles. Main battery. Target the lead craft of Group 1. Warning shots are over." 7 o'clock in the morning. The Iranian commander saw the American helicopter bank sharply. He saw the laser designator beam activate. He knew what was coming. He did not retreat. He reached for the radio. Signal his own missile batteries on the coast. The world seemed to pause for a single heartbeat. The sun was fully up. The water was bright. The smoke from the burning tanker was a black scar on the horizon. Both sides had committed. There was no longer a path back to the status quo. The captain of the Carney spoke one word into his headset. "Engage." 7 o'clock in the morning. The forward 5-inch gun on the USS Carney barked. A single high-explosive shell screamed across the water. It struck the sea 20 meters in front of the Iranian-led boat. The resulting geyser of white water was 30 feet high. It drenched the Iranian commander and his crew. It was the final warning. 7 o'clock and 30 seconds in the morning. The Iranian commander did not slow down. He wiped the salt water from his eyes and grabbed the radio. "All groups, execute. For the revolution." On the decks of the 11 remaining boats, sailors shouldered missile launchers. 6 heat-seeking missiles streaked into the sky. They were aimed at the American helicopter and the destroyer. 7:01 in the morning. Inside the Seahawk helicopter, Lieutenant Miller saw the launches. Guardian 1. Missiles in the air. Braking left. Deploying flares. The helicopter banked hard. Bundles of magnesium flares erupted from the sides of the aircraft. They burned with a blinding white light. 2 Iranian missiles followed the flares into the ocean. 4 others continued to track the destroyer. 7:02 in the morning. The USS Carney's close-in weapon system came to life. The 20mm Gatling gun began to scream. It was a continuous, mechanical roar that shook the entire superstructure. A stream of tungsten tracers cut through the air. 1 Iranian missile disintegrated 200 yards from the hull. A second missile was clipped and spiraled into the sea. The third and fourth missiles were still coming. 7:03 in the morning. Guardian 1. Rifle. 1 away. Lieutenant Miller fired a Hellfire missile. It streaked down from the sky. It struck the second boat in the Iranian line. The impact was catastrophic. The boat's fuel and ammunition detonated simultaneously. A massive fireball rose 100 feet into the air. The shockwave rattled the windows of the distant tankers. 7:03 and 30 seconds in the morning. The Carney's main gun fired again. This time, it was a direct hit. The shell struck the bow of an Iranian fast attack craft. The boat was pulverized. It simply ceased to exist. Only a patch of burning oil remained on the surface. 7:04 in the morning. The land-based batteries on Keshem Island launched. 3 Silkworm anti-ship missiles erupted from the coastline. They were massive. They carried half-ton warheads. They dropped to 20 feet above the water. They were moving at 500 miles per hour. They were 3 minutes from the USS Carney. 7:04 and 30 seconds in the morning. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air was thick with the sound of alarms. Captain, Silkworms inbound. Bearing 010. Range 12 miles. The captain did not flinch. VLS. Launching. Engage with SM-2. Now. 2 Standard missiles roared out of the vertical launch cells. On the forward deck, they climbed into the sky on pillars of white smoke. 7:05 in the morning. The Strait of HORMUZ was a landscape of fire and metal. 6 boats were burning or sinking. 2 American missiles were hunting 3 Iranian ones. The Pacific Glory was trapped in the middle. The global oil market was about to experience a shock it would never forget. The situation was at the absolute breaking point. 7:06 in the morning. The sky over the Strait of HORMUZ was torn apart by 3 massive explosions. High above the water, the Standard missiles from the USS Carney intercepted the Iranian Silkworms. The impact created white rings of fire that hung in the air for several seconds. Debris rained down into the sea. The immediate missile threat was gone. But the tension in the Combat Information Center did not break. It thickened. 7:08 in the morning. A massive underwater detonation shook the entire region. The sound was not the sharp crack of a missile strike. It was a deep, low-frequency boom that moved through the water like a physical wall. It originated 4 miles to the south, near the Masandam Peninsula. The shock wave was so powerful, it lifted the stern of a nearby Panamanian freighter 2 feet out of the water. 7:09 in the morning. The sonar technician on the USS Carney pressed his headsets against his ears. His face went pale. "Captain, we have multiple subsurface explosions. These are not hull hits. These are bottom-moored influence mines, large ones." The captain gripped the armrests of his chair.
Explain the presence
Source?
of these mines in this sector immediately.
Negative, sir. These were already there. They are being triggered by the acoustic signatures of the fast attack craft and the tankers. The whole southern channel is active. 7:10 in the morning. On the bridge of the Iranian command boat. The Iranian commander nearly fell as the shockwave from a second underwater explosion hit his hull. He looked to his port side. One of his remaining fast attack craft was gone. It had not been hit by an American missile. It had simply disappeared in a mountain of white water and black mud from the seafloor. He keyed his radio. His voice was no longer confident. It was urgent. Base. This is Group 1. We have contact with unmapped mines. I repeat. The southern channel is salted. We are taking on water. We are disengaging to the north. The response from Day. Kesham Island was a long silence. Then, confirm. Are these our mines? The commander looked at the black, oily water rising around his feet. Negative. These are older models. Soviet-era influence mines. They were not placed by us this morning. We are in a trap. 7:12 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the USS Carney. The tactical action officer pointed to the sonar display. Dozens of new red icons were appearing. They formed a dense, jagged line across the narrowest part of the strait. It was a minefield of massive proportions. It had been hidden in the silt of the seafloor for years, or perhaps placed in secret weeks ago, by a third party. Captain, the officer said, the entire strait is impassable. If the Pacific Glory continues its turn, it will enter the heart of the field in less than 5 minutes. The Iranian boats are already fleeing to shallow water. The captain looked at the burning global Voyager, and then at the hidden threat beneath the waves. The mission had changed in an instant. This was no longer a battle for control. It was a race for survival. Bridge. Tactical. All engines stop. Tell the Pacific Glory to drop anchor immediately. Do not move a single meter. We are in a graveyard. 7:15 in the morning. The firing stopped. The Iranian coastal batteries went silent. The American helicopter hovered in place. The remaining 5 fast attack craft turned away from the tankers. Both sides realized the same terrifying truth. The most strategic waterway in the world was now a dead zone. Neither the Americans nor the Iranians could guarantee safe passage. The water of the strait looked calm, but beneath the surface, hundreds of tons of high explosives waited for the next vibration. The pivot was complete. The war had been interrupted by a ghost from the past. 7:20 in the morning. The Strait of HORMUZ was a graveyard of silence and smoke. The USS Carney sat motionless in the center of the deep water channel. Its engines were at a dead stop. On the bridge, the captain watched the digital representation of the minefield on his primary screen. Every sailor on the ship was aware of the fragility of their position. One wrong vibration from a propeller could trigger an acoustic sensor on the seafloor. The sonar technician reported to the bridge. Captain, we have detected 38 individual contacts in a 3-mile radius. They are moored at various depths. These are not modern Iranian models. They are Soviet-era M80 mines. The recent artillery fire and high-speed maneuvers have disturbed the silt. They are active now. The captain looked at the Pacific Glory. The tanker was less than 800 meters away. It was a massive target. Tactical. Send a message to the tanker. Tell them to remain exactly where they are. Do not cycle their pumps. Do not move their rudder. We are sending out an underwater drone to survey the path. 7:28 in the morning. The Iranian command boat. The Iranian commander watched his remaining 4 boats move slowly toward the shallow waters. His own vessel was trailing a slick of dark oil. The deck was littered with spent shell casings. The aggression of the morning had been replaced by a cold, clinical fear. He looked at the American destroyer. It was no longer an enemy to be engaged. It was a fellow prisoner of the minefield. He spoke into his radio. His voice was low. Base. This is Sabalin 1. We are clear of the deep water. We have lost 6 vessels. The Americans are not pursuing. They are trapped. We are heading for Bandar Abbas for emergency repairs. The response from the mainland was hushed. Copy. Do not re-enter the channel. High Command is in emergency session. There is a diplomatic request from the Sultanate of Oman. 7:45 in the morning. United States 5th Fleet Headquarters. Bahrain. Vice Admiral Collins looked at the satellite imagery of the strait. The black smoke from the global Voyager was still visible. but the tactical situation had shifted from a kinetic battle to a massive salvage and clearing operation. Collins spoke to his chief of staff. The Oman is just called. They are acting as a conduit for Tehran. The Iranians are claiming they did not know the minefield was active. They are calling for a temporary ceasefire to allow for the rescue of their sailors in the water. The chief of staff looked at the map. Do we believe them, sir? It does not matter if we believe them, Collins replied. We cannot move the Carney. We cannot move the tankers. We need to clear a path. Tell the Iranians we will observe a 24-hour halt in all offensive operations, on one condition. They provide us with any charts they have of this field. We know these mines are old, but someone has updated the triggers. 8 o'clock in the morning. The sun was high now. The heat was beginning to shimmer off the surface of the water. The USS Carney remained a silent sentinel in the middle of a hidden minefield. To the north, the Iranian coastal batteries remained aimed at the sea, but their radars were in standby mode. The first phase of the crisis had ended with blood and fire. The second phase was beginning with a desperate, silent cooperation. The global markets had already reacted. The price of oil was climbing in vertical lines on every exchange in the world. The captain of the Carney looked out at the horizon. It is going to be a long day. 8 o'clock in the morning. The Persian Gulf. The sun was a white disk in a pale sky. The temperature on the deck of the USS Carney climbed past 90 degrees. The wind had died down. The surface of the water was like a sheet of gray silk. It looked peaceful. It was a lie. Inside the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere was silent and focused. The immediate adrenaline of the missile exchange had faded. It was replaced by the grinding tension of a stalemate. The captain stood by the radio console. A message was coming in from the American embassy in Muscat. The communications officer spoke. Captain, the Omanis have confirmed. Tehran has agreed to the tactical pause. They are ordering all coastal batteries to stand down. They are also sending a search and rescue vessel for their downed crews. They are requesting we do not interfere. The captain nodded. Inform the 5th Fleet. We will allow the rescue ship, but they are to stay 5 miles north of the shipping lane. If they deviate, we will consider it a hostile act. 8:45 in the morning. The supertanker Pacific Glory. On the deck of the massive ship, the heat from the fires was intense. The crew had managed to contain the blaze in the forward storage locker, but the smell of burning rubber and chemical foam hung heavy in the air. Captain Malikoff stood on the wing of the bridge. He looked down at the water. He could see a dark shape bobbing just beneath the surface. It was a mine. It was less than 50 meters from his hull. He spoke into his handheld radio. Bridge, this is Malikov. Tell the men to move to the stern. If that thing touches us, the bow is going to open like a tin can. We are waiting for the Americans to send a team. 9 o'clock in the morning. Bandar Abbas Naval Base, Iran. The Iranian commander who had led the swarm stood on the pier. He watched as the 3 remaining boats were tied up. One was listing heavily to the port side. Ambulances were waiting with their lights flashing. He saw 2 sailors being carried off on stretchers. They were covered in soot and blood. A senior officer approached him. His face was a mask of fury and confusion. The Americans hit us hard. We lost 6 crews, and now we have mines in our own backyard. How did this happen? The commander shook his head. The mines are old. They are not ours. Someone else put them there. They were waiting for a fight to wake them up. We were the alarm clock. The senior officer looked out at the horizon. The world is going to blame us. They will say we salted the Strait. The tankers will not come back for months. 9:30 in the morning. The USS Carney. The destroyer deployed its underwater search vehicle. It was a yellow, box-shaped drone. It descended into the murky green water of the channel. The video feed appeared on the screens in the Combat Information Center. It showed the seafloor. It was littered with debris. The sonar technician pointed to a metallic object half buried in the sand. M80. Look at the tether. It has been modified. There is a new acoustic sensor strapped to the top. This is not just a relic. Someone upgraded these mines recently. They were planted to look like old Soviet stock, but the electronics are modern. The captain leaned in. "Can you identify the source of the electronics?" "Not yet, sir, but this was a professional job. This field was designed to be a trigger. It was meant to be found during a conflict. The mystery was deepening. The strait was not just closed. It was a crime scene. The tactical battle was over. The strategic investigation was just beginning. The Pacific Glory was stable for now, but the clock was ticking. The tides would soon shift. When the water moved, the mines would move with it. 10 o'clock in the morning. The deck of the USS Carney was a hive of controlled activity. 2 MH-60 Sierra helicopters from the Carrier Strike Group hovered near the destroyer. They did not land. Specialized divers from an explosive ordnance disposal mobile unit slid down fast ropes onto the aft deck. They were carrying heavy equipment bags filled with acoustic sensors and remote-controlled neutralizing charges. The captain met the team leader in the hangar. "The current is going to shift in 40 minutes. We have a mine 15 meters from the Pacific Glory. If that hull moves, the pressure change might trigger the sensor." The team leader checked his oxygen tank. "Understood, Captain. We are going in with the underwater sleds. We will attempt to stabilize the tethers before we blow them. We need a 5-mile clearance for the detonation." "You have it," the captain said. "But watch the northern horizon. The Iranians are still at their shore batteries." 11:15 in the morning. Bandar Abbas Naval Base. The Iranian naval commander stood in the operations center. The room was crowded with intelligence officers and political advisors from Tehran. The mood was somber. The loss of 6 fast attack craft was a heavy blow. But the greater concern was the economic paralysis. The senior advisor spoke into a secure phone. He listened for a moment and then hung up. "The Supreme National Security Council has issued the order. All Revolutionary Guard vessels are to return to port immediately. We will allow the American divers to clear the southern channel. We will handle the northern side ourselves." The commander looked at the radar screen. "They will think we are weak. They will think we are rational," the advisor replied. "If the oil stops flowing for a week, the world will forget who fired first. They will only remember who let the clearing start." 11:30 in the morning. The water near the Pacific Glory. 2 divers moved through the murky green depths. They were less than 20 feet from the rusted steel sphere of an M80 mine. It looked like a giant, spiked eye watching them. One diver carefully attached a small, high-frequency jammer to the side of the mine. It was designed to confuse the acoustic trigger. The diver spoke through his underwater communications. "Control. Jammer is active. Sensor is neutralized. We are placing the primary charge now." The response from the Carney was immediate. "Copy. Get clear. We are marking the location for a controlled detonation." 12 o'clock noon. A massive plume of white water erupted 3 miles south of the USS Carney. The sound was a dull thud that vibrated through the hulls of every ship in the strait. It was the first of many. The crisis had resolved tactically. No more missiles were in the air. The Iranian swarm had retreated to the safety of their harbors. The American destroyer remained on high alert, but its guns were no longer tracking active targets. However, the victory was hollow. The Strait of HORMUZ was officially closed to all commercial traffic. 2 supertankers were dead in the water. 1 was still burning. The global energy supply had been severed at the neck. The captain of the Carney stood on the bridge and looked at the empty horizon. The battle was over. The consequences were just beginning. 9 o'clock in the morning. 3 days after the engagement, the United States ship Carney sat alongside the pier at Jebel Ali in the United Arab Emirates. The hull of the destroyer was stained with salt and the black soot of engine exhaust. Its 5-inch gun was centered and lowered. The crew was no longer in flash gear. They were dressed in working uniforms. They were cleaning the decks and restacking the vertical launch cells. They moved with the slow, deliberate pace of people who had seen the edge of a cliff and stepped back. In the wardroom, the captain sat with a team of intelligence officers from the Office of Naval Intelligence. They were looking at a table covered in high-resolution photographs. The photos showed the recovered components of the mines. One officer pointed to a circuit board sealed in plastic. "This is the trigger, Captain. The casing is Soviet era. manufactured in 1984. But the processor is modern. It is a commercial-grade acoustic sensor from a company in Singapore. It was modified to recognize the specific propeller signature of Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and ultra-large crude carriers. The captain leaned over the table. So, it was a trap. It was not a random field left over from the tanker war. Correct, the officer replied. Someone spent months surveying the seafloor. They placed these mines exactly where they would cause the most chaos if a skirmish broke out. The Iranians were just as surprised as we were when the first one detonated. They almost lost their own command boat. Do we have an attribution? The captain asked. The officer shook his head. The hardware was purchased through 3 different shell companies in Europe and Asia. We are following the money, but it is a ghost trail. Whoever did this wanted the Strait closed. They did not care who they had to kill to make it happen. 10 o'clock in the morning, London, England. Inside the Lloyd's of London insurance market, the atmosphere was frantic. The massive digital boards that tracked global shipping insurance rates were glowing red. In 72 hours, the cost to insure a single tanker transit through the Persian Gulf had increased by 4,000%. A senior analyst spoke to a group of investors. The Strait is not technically blocked. The Americans have cleared a narrow path, but the risk is no longer calculated. It is absolute. No commercial hull will enter that water until the entire seafloor is mapped. That will take months. Until then, the oil stays in the ground. 11 o'clock in the morning. Tehran, Iran. The streets were quiet, but the political offices were in a state of high-intensity debate. The loss of 6 fast-attack craft was being hailed as a heroic defense of sovereignty in public. In private, the Iranian leadership was realizing the scale of the disaster. Their main source of national income had been severed by a minefield they did not control. The commander of the naval forces stood in a secure bunker. He looked at the charts of the northern channel. His divers had found 12 more mines near their own naval bases. He spoke to his deputy. "We have been played. We thought we were the ones holding the knife to the world's throat, but someone else put a leash on us. Now, we are the ones who have to ask the Americans for help to clear our own ports." 1 o'clock in the afternoon, New York City. On the floor of the New York Mercantile Exchange, the price of West Texas Intermediate crude oil hit $280 a barrel. It was an unprecedented spike. The global economy was beginning to reel. In every capital city, from Tokyo to Berlin, governments were preparing for emergency rationing. The military engagement in the Strait had lasted less than 2 hours, but the strategic aftermath was entering its 4th day. The USS Carney had won the tactical battle. It had defended the Pacific Glory. It had neutralized the Iranian swarm. But the victory felt different now. The world had learned how fragile the global supply chain really was. A few modified sensors and some old explosives had done more damage than a full-scale invasion. The morning was hot and still. The smoke from the global Voyager had finally dissipated, but the shadow over the Strait was longer than it had ever been. 1 week later, the Pentagon, Washington District of Columbia. The briefing room was silent. On the primary screen, a map of the Strait of HORMUZ showed a narrow green line through a field of red dots. The green line represented the cleared channel. The red dots represented the hundreds of mines still being identified by unmanned underwater vehicles. The world was looking at the most expensive parking lot in history. A senior strategic analyst stood at the podium. He adjusted his glasses and looked at the assembled officers. The tactical phase of the HORMUZ incident is over. The USS Carney has been relieved by the USS Higgins. The Iranian fast attack groups have been confined to their piers. But the strategic reality is that we have lost the battle for energy stability. The analyst clicked a button. A graph showed the global price of oil. It had stabilized at $240 a barrel. The market is not reacting to the fire. It is reacting to the uncertainty. We have proven that the most advanced naval force in the world can be neutralized by low-cost, high-impact sabotage. The perpetrator remains unknown, but the message is clear. The choke points of the world are no longer secure. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the Gulf of Oman. The USS Carney moved slowly toward the open ocean. Its mission in the Departmental Bay Strait was finished. The ship was heading for a scheduled port visit in Naples before returning to its home port in Florida. The crew stood along the rails. They looked back at the jagged mountains of the Mazandam Peninsula. In the Combat Information Center, the tactical action officer sat at his station. The screens were quiet. No alarms were sounding. He thought about the morning of the engagement. He thought about the Iranian commander who had charged his ship. He wondered if that man was still alive. He wondered if the commander realized they had both been part of a play written by someone else. The captain entered the room. He looked at the empty radar displays. Status of the channel? The officer looked up. Sir, the mine clearing continues. 2 more tankers moved through this morning under escort. The Iranians are staying 5 miles back. They are providing the sonar data we requested. The captain nodded. It is a strange piece. We are working with the people who were shooting at us 4 days ago. It is the only way to keep the lights on, sir, the officer replied. The captain walked to the center of the room. No, it is the only way to avoid a full-scale war. Both sides looked into the abyss on Tuesday morning. Neither side liked what they saw. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a military cemetery in Tehran. The Iranian commander stood before 6 fresh graves. There were no cameras here. There were no speeches for the evening news. Just the sound of the wind blowing off the desert and the quiet sobbing of a few family members. He had lost half of his unit in less than 10 minutes of combat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of twisted metal. It was a fragment of a Hellfire missile casing. It was cold and sharp. He dropped it into the dust. He had spent his entire life preparing for a holy war against the great Satan. He had expected glory. Instead, he had found himself trapped in a muddy channel, hunted by a machine he could not see. While his own waters turned against him, he looked at the sky. He could hear the distant hum of a high-altitude drone. He did not know if it was American or Iranian. He did not care. He realized that modern warfare was no longer about courage or ideology. It was about math. It was about the cost of a barrel of oil versus the cost of a human life. Final strategic assessment. The engagement in the Strait of HORMUZ will be studied by naval academies for decades. It will be cited as the perfect example of asymmetric escalation. It will show how a superior force can be checked by a ghost in the water. No missiles flew in the weeks that followed. No ships were lost. But history shifted. When the line was crossed, both sides chose restraint. They did not do it out of kindness. They did it because they realized that in a globalized world, a victory in the Strait is a loss for everyone. Modern warfare is decided not by who fires first, but by who chooses not to fire at all. The USS Carney and the Iranian swarm had both survived the morning, but the world they defended was gone. It was replaced by a new, more dangerous era of shadows and hidden triggers. The Strait of HORMUZ remains the most important 5 miles of water on Earth. It is also the most fragile. And whatever is watching from the depths is not finished. 5:10 in the morning. The Strait of HORMUZ. 12 Iranian fast attack craft sliced through the black water of the Persian Gulf.